what got you into politics?
Okay. I've always had an interest in politics, but as a CPA during tax season, that's the same time that the legislative session is, so I couldn't really do that. But I got into the school board. I was there for 2 terms in the West Ada District, and I was on a appointment to a couple of different committees for the Idaho governor. I was the treasurer for a couple of different senators that ran their elections. So I've been in and around it for a long time. But after I retired from being a CPA full-time, then I could go be there. I figured that my professional expertise as a CPA, the only one out of 105 legislators down there, and my experience on the school board would be helpful to try to do the best I could for the citizens of Idaho.
And I know that you are a licensed CPA,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a lot of your background as well. And you said you have served all these boards, but who are you as an individual, and what are some of your driving values?
Well, as an individual, I'm very religious. I believe in God, and we go to church every week. We have a large family. We have 8 kids. We've got a whole bunch of grandkids. And so family is very, very important to us, and therefore education becomes important. I believe that people should be free to do and live as they should, not have a lot of government interference in their lives. I'm a runner. I ran in high school and also at BYU, which has a great track team. And so I was a miler and a half miler, and also did cross country there as well. So I still run. I ran 7 miles this morning.
I know, you told me.
Yeah.
And, with that, you've been in office for 3 terms now,
Mm-hmm.
but recently your constituency changed.
Yes, it did.
So, tell me about how you plan to serve this new constituency, and do you feel that, your skill set that you bring and your values align with theirs?
I think they do. My parents were raised in Burley and Hayburn, 2 small communities, and so I spent a lot of my time there visiting relatives and family and that kind of thing. So small town background, even though I grew up here in town. We raised our kids on 5 acres, and so we had cows and chickens and all that kind of stuff. And so that's not the same as 1,000 or 2,000 acres in Emmett, but we raised our kids in a rural area south of Meridian, and so rural is not anything foreign to us. We had our family reunion in Gem County, in the Black Canyon Reservoir there. I've met with farmers there in Emmett, have support from some of those folks, which I appreciate very much. And so I feel that I can relate to them and talk to them and do whatever would be helpful for the folks in Gem County as well as Eagle. Eagle and Gem County are not all that different. Gem County is starting, particularly Emmett, get a lot of influx, people coming from out of state just like we have here in Eagle. And so it'll be important to help them as they adjust to all of that influx.
Absolutely. I think we all have to deal with that. Which, leads me into, if reelected, what would be your top 3 priorities?
Well, one has been transportation. And so I serve on Joint Finance Appropriation Committee. So we deal with 105 different agencies at the state and all of their budgets and that kind of thing. And so this year we put $1.25 billion into transportation. So hundreds of millions more than we've ever done before, a lot of that out of the general fund, which is new as well. So we have Highway 44 that we're extending all the way to Caldwell, and that'll help those folks out in Star, Middleton, that area. And then same with Highway 2026, that's also going to be 4 lanes headed out to the freeway. Highway 16, we're extending from Chinden to the freeway, and that will be huge to help with Eagle Road traffic and 10 Mile and all these other places that have a lot of traffic here. So people in those outer communities can hit the freeway and not have to come through town. So transportation is a biggie. In addition to that, education is important, and I do the education budgets, both the K-12 and the higher ed. We had $3.3 billion for education this year for K-12, $400 million for the colleges, universities. And with that, our family, we've homeschooled our kids. We've had them in private schools as well as public ed, obviously. So we feel that parents ought to be able to choose a venue that they feel is best for them. But we ought to give whatever support we can from the state to help with the funding for those issues and the making sure that parents are happy with where their kids are and what they're learning. Obviously, property taxes has been a huge issue. That's been one that I continue to get tons of emails and phone calls, et cetera. And so this last session, we worked heavily with mayors of Star and Eagle, the Idaho Association of Cities, Association of Counties, Associated Taxpayers, private citizens, business folks, trying to determine how best to address property taxes. That's the most repressive kind of tax that we have. With income tax, you only pay tax if you have an income. Sales tax, you only pay tax if you buy something. Property tax, you pay tax just as you're sitting in your home and doing nothing every day. And so even when you had your home paid off, like a lot of these older folks, their homes, they still have this bill that's chunking every day. So we're looking at ways that we can help alleviate that burden on those homeowners.
And property taxes has been a big discussion in the legislature for several years now.
It has.
And while there has been some movement to try and help the taxpayer, I feel like a lot of times legislators feel like they've kind of fallen a little short.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, if you were reelected, you would do to try and propel the conversation further?
Let me comment first. When we passed House Bill 389 last year, people said, well, that won't do anything. But I was just talking to one of my partners, and he said his property taxes this last year went down $400 because of that bill last year. So that was a help. We will continue to work with these folks to see if we can get the property taxes down. We could do more from the state level. For example, with schools, we have a constitutional responsibility to provide an education for the kids. And supplemental levies are a challenge. The state could help with that, to eliminate those by paying more. We had surplus last year. We have surplus building up this year. I'd like to see some of that surplus going towards the help with schools. And then bond issues are obviously a big challenge, particularly here in this valley where we're building a new high school every couple of years. And so we could do some help with those. We could also just help with the cities and counties, give them more support. They keep saying, we want a local option tax, local option tax. Well, if the state paid more, maybe they wouldn't need a local option tax.
And I also saw on your campaign website that you're quite passionate about grocery taxes. Tell me a little bit about that. I know that was a topic this year too. That there was an increase, I think, in the amount, the rebate, what you got.
Yeah,
back.
the credit.
The credit.
Mm-hmm.
But do you feel more needs to be done?
The thing with grocery taxes is that every Idaho resident does get a credit back on their personal income tax returns, which could be a big help. So only Idaho residents get that benefit. Out-of-staters that come in and pay that grocery tax, et cetera, don't. But there's such a hue and cry from people saying, quit taxing my groceries and all that kind of thing, that as that credit keeps creeping up, then the switch from having a credit and having a tax to just getting rid of the whole thing becomes easier to do. And people need to understand that even if we get rid of sales tax on groceries, that doesn't mean that everything that they buy in the grocery store is not going to have a tax. Because paper products, all kinds of personal products and other things would still be taxed. So that is something that was not brought up last year, as you recall. Those kinds of tax changes have to begin in the House, and we work with them. I'm the vice chair of the tax committee in the Senate. So we work with the House folks, but it has to originate in the House. And the situation there was that committee was not willing to hear anything on sales tax on groceries. And so until that changes, nothing can happen. But some of the folks who are involved there are not running, so I think we have an opportunity to look at that again this year, maybe get some movement there.
Do you feel like, with the skill set that you bring, it would benefit you next year to make these changes and, really support the people of Idaho and your constituency, maybe versus another candidate?
Yeah. First, you have to be in the decision-making process. And other folks may not be in that decision-making process. They have other priorities. But I happen to be, as I say, the vice chair of the tax committee, and working outside of the session with all these other stakeholders I told you about. We'll continue to work with them. They're all keyed up and ready to go. If I'm elected, then after the primary, we'll begin working on that again, getting ready for the next session. Because what happens in the legislature is the work takes place outside of the legislature. There's got to be a lot of groundwork to get things ready. Once it gets to the legislature, it is so fast and furious with hundreds of bills that we're dealing with, and you have to have legislative support from other legislators before you ever get there. And so we need to have a package put together that we can present, and present to legislators as well before the session begins. So that's our hope.
And what would you say are some of the bills? I know you talked about transportation, and there was an income tax rebate.
There was a rebate and a reduction in the rate, both. Mm-hmm.
What would you say are some of your accomplishments from this past year?
Well, that's one of them. My preference was to focus on property taxes this year, but the governor had his priorities, and when he does his State of the State address and lines things out, as you recall, to pass anything, you've got to have 18 in the Senate, 38 in the House, and a governor that'll sign it. And so we worked very closely with the governor. We met with him a couple of times before the session began, and his priority this year was income taxes. And we asked him to support us next year as we focus on the property tax issue. So that's kind of a background to that.
And, what we're kind of going off the accomplishments, what do you think wasn't addressed this year that needs to be done for the people of Idaho?
Well, the property tax thing, obviously, that's the most repressive tax that we have. So we need to make some serious inroads on that to help homeowners.
And I know that you have a background in education, too.
I do.
And education, I think I wrote a story that said they won big this year because they did get a lot of funding. What more do you think could be done in education?
Well, we had Google come and talk to us a year or so ago, and a lot of things that could be done online, et cetera, to change the whole way that we're doing education. So I think we need to be innovative and look at things that are happening in other states, other folks, and what they're doing, and not just have brick and mortar all the time, and just look at how we can help people that are homeschooling and help people that are in private schools as well as in public schools. So the funding will continue. I mean, our funding this year, we gave a $1,000 bonus to every teacher. We had about $4,000 for every teacher to help with their health insurance. We moved them up on the career ladder. So this was a huge year for teachers and for education. Whether or not we can do that again will depend on the kind of revenues that we have. And I also serve on the Revenue Outlook Committee, where we project those revenues every year. And as you know, we have to have a balanced budget, so I work projecting the revenues, work on the taxation to bring in the revenue, and work on how that money's spent. That $13 billion budget, which is a big budget, that we have to get into the detail and try to make sure we're doing what's best for the citizens of Idaho.
And, Idaho does have a surplus, and I think, because of that, we were, kind of situated to make more of those larger expenditures.
Yeah, we were.
If reelected, how would you, in your roles with taxation and Revenue Outlook and JFAC, how would you help make sure that the surplus doesn't go away and that, the books stay good?
Good. Great question. One of the things I initiated a couple of years ago was to increase the amount that we have in a reserve. So at the state level, we have a reserve, rainy day fund, if you want to call it that. In 2008, when they had the recession, the revenues went down about 35%. And the worst thing in the world is to have that happen in a recession and then have to have a tax increase to continue to maintain what's happening at the state level. So in order to avoid that, we're building up a reserve that should help us in the next recession, which we will have because they The economy is always ebbing and flowing like that, so we'll have another recession. So yeah, we put away some serious money to help so that if we do have another downturn, we won't be looking at having to increase taxes to maintain services, particularly for education, because we have to continue funding that.
And with this growth that we're having as a state, especially in your areas, Eagle is growing, Gemtown is growing, everyone is growing. How would you, if reelected, serve the needs of your growing constituency?
Well, one of the things that has to happen, number one, you've got to have infrastructure to receive all these folks. People say, well, how do we stop the growth? Can't we just kind of stop that? You really can't. I mean, it's freedom and people are moving here because Idaho has a lot to offer. So maintaining our values is an important part of why people are coming here and what I propose to do in the legislature. So as we look at the growth aspect, those decisions that are made on subdivisions, et cetera, are done at the local level. That's not the state level involved in that. But we can help coordinate as we talk about infrastructure, particularly roads. We can coordinate what we're doing at the state level with the local. For example, this year, we gave the cities and counties $200 million for roads. We hadn't done that kind of thing before. And that's the kind of thing where we can continue to support the infrastructure at the local level so it doesn't become a heavy property tax burden on the homeowners from the cities and the counties, because we can help subsidize that from the state.
And with that growth came redistricting.
Yeah.
Redistricting did change your constituency, as we mentioned. It also put you up against another incumbent. What were your thoughts on that process and having to, now run against one of your colleagues?
Yeah, that's tough. Steve Thane and I are friends. We sit by each other in the Senate. I told him when that first was finalized, I said, I'm never going to say anything negative about you. And he said the same thing to me. So we're maintaining the cordiality. We're talking about issues. We're not doing any character assassination, anything like that. So that's just the way it goes every 10 years that happens, and so you live with it.
And, what sets you apart from, without, I just know that you said you didn't want to say anything bad, but what sets you apart from Senator Thane and your other competitors in this race?
It's the focus. He has a particular focus. My focus is on the financial side of things. You think about one of the major purposes and activities of government is the collection of revenue and the spending of revenue, maintaining all the state agencies. Education is about 2/3 of the budget. So all of that has to be taken into account. So I feel that I'm working in those areas that most affect every taxpayer out there, whether they have kids in school or not. And his is more focused in the education side.
And, with you being you're from Idaho,
Uh-huh.
you're born here.
Born and raised.
Exactly.
Raised in Boise, raised our kids in Meridian.
Why do you think you're best suited to continue representing this changing community? What would you say? What would you say to a constituent?
I would kind of summarize what I just said to you, that I'm here to do what I think is best for the citizens of Idaho. I listen to them. I respond to them in emails, phone calls, that kind of thing. I get close to 100 emails a day, and I had a constituent just last night at a meet and greet tell me that she heard that I'm the guy that responds to people when they send in complaints or whatever they want to talk about. I will help to maintain the freedoms that they have here, and we'll make sure that we don't have the, if you hate to use that term, but the woke things coming into the educational system and into our lives, whether it be the critical race theory that you hear about or whatever they want to talk about. We just want to make sure that we keep Idaho, and that's what's attracting all these people to come in here. And I've been a stalwart in defending those values, and we'll continue to defend those values so that we keep Idaho the way it is.
Is there anything else that you want to make sure the voters know about C. Scott Grow?
Well, I've been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police. I was the Legislator of the Year last year from the Fraternal Order of Police, and And I have their endorsement this year again. I'm endorsed by the firefighters, endorsed by Idaho Chooses Life. I was a sponsor on the heartbeat bill that we had this year, and on the bill we passed a year or so ago, 2 years ago, on relative to anti-abortion. So I'm a strong proponent of life, pro-Second Amendment, and pro-states' rights. And so I'll continue to fight for that.
Is there anything else you want to make sure?
I would just say thank you for taking your time to be here with me, and let you know that I'm happy to be serving the citizens here in Idaho. Would love to get their support to keep doing it again.
Thank you.
Thank you.